Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. I really debated on if it was the right call to make this video, but ultimately I decided that it would be good not only for me personally to just kind of go through some of the mistakes that I made, but to also warn people about what to do when finding beta readers, the best way to find beta readers, and how to not do it. This is an example of me being, quite frankly, naive and negligent and just not very careful. Without further ado, here's the story about how I got scammed by a beta reader, and they most likely fed my manuscript that I gave them through AI. Luckily, it is not the full manuscript. It is only the first 2 chapters that I sent to them that potentially was fed through an AI. But a little bit of background of how exactly I got here and how I was able to kind of figure out finally that I was being scammed. Now, when I first tell this portion of the story, now looking back, I see just how incredibly stupid it was to do. I was really having a hard time finding people who were willing to trade and beta read. I felt that I had reached out to so many people, and there were many people who were lovely and wonderful and said yes. And oftentimes I would just simply not hear a response back from them, even though they were very excited to read the manuscript, life gets in the way, and I was getting impatient. So I decided to do a little bit more of a volunteer-based situation. On my Instagram, I decided to make a survey of people who would be willing to beta read my science fiction teen novel. And I got a few results within the first 24 to 48 hours, and a good amount of these people were actually very legitimate as far as I can tell. Looking over their notes and everything that they said about the questions that I had asked with beta reading, it seemed pretty legitimate, and I studied them thoroughly, so I at the very least would be surprised if AI was involved with other people's input. And I got about 3 other people, other than this person who scammed me, to get results back to me. Now in hindsight, I see that I did not know a lot of these people who were volunteering their time and their effort to beta read, which partially was kind of nice because I knew that they weren't going to be biased, they weren't going to be afraid of hurting my feelings because they didn't know me. But on the opposite end, I also didn't know them, and I didn't know what they were doing with my precious script and manuscript. Essentially, the way that I set it up is I gave them a survey to fill out of a bit of a questionnaire, and also they needed to check off and agree to certain terms and conditions. One of those terms and conditions that I was the most afraid of was these people are just going to steal my manuscript, claim it as their own, and publish it, and then get all the credit for it. And I was a little bit more aware of that than aware about AI. This happened several months ago. This was during the time where I feel like I wasn't quite as aware as how heavily AI was starting to be used. It was known. I had no idea how often it was being used. So I didn't have anything in my terms and conditions or clauses about AI at all, because it just completely, it went over my head entirely. At this point, I wish that I would have thought of that, of course, but hindsight is 2020. I felt that I was doing the best that I could at the time for everything. So I had a few people sign up, and one of these people went by the name Reed Kemi. I am making this name public, one, because it is not the name that they go by anymore, and also because if they do end up reusing that name, or if you are thinking of using that name, I would suggest that you don't. And I want to warn as many writers as possible about this person, which is why I am more comfortable divulging that information since it is a pen name. But let's go into the email that Reed Kemi sent back to me about my first 2 chapters that I sent to them. For all of my beta readers, I only sent them a few chapters at a time. I never sent them the full manuscript. I never sent them big chunks of my book, only a couple of chapters at a time. And until I got the feedback from them, I would not be sending them more. So here's how that all went, and how I was able to figure out that I was being scammed. Just to give a little bit of a recap before we get into this, the book that I am writing is called Sleepless Wonder, and it follows the protagonist who does not need to sleep in order to live. She has never slept a day in her life. She doesn't know how to, and it doesn't seem to heavily affect her as much. She gains rest in different ways, and because of that, there are a lot of very dangerous scientific people that are after her, trying to do experiments on her to see how they can replicate that for the entire world, and she is currently being in pursuit. So that is the background of the story before we get into the notes. So for this, what I am going to do is I am going to have 2 documents up. This is my full draft. As you can see, 371 pages. The full draft of my story. I am not that bothered that you guys can see the first page of it. If anything, hopefully it's a little bit of a hook to see if you guys like reading it a little bit more in the future. Another reason why I am doing this is because I have decided to switch from being more of an indie publisher in the future to a traditional publisher in the future. And I know that traditional publishers are now searching through AI engines to make sure that nothing in the manuscript has been fed to different AI platforms in fears of publishing a book that is completely written by AI, or at the very least heavily influenced by AI, which means they are stealing other people's ideas. And I want to make it clear that this was done without my consent. This was done without my knowledge. They did not add in any sort of note saying that they used AI, and hopefully with these first 2 chapters, nothing too terrible will come from it. I am very nervous about that though, which is why this is equally as devastating. This could affect me heavily in the future. So we've got my manuscript, my full manuscript right here, and additionally we have all of the notes that this beta reader gave me, my feedback on Sleepless Wonder by Reed Kemi. We start a little bit with chapter 1, and throughout this, even though it's kind of seems like, again, I was asking for it to be scammed, I really wanted to write these questions more so for them to stay on task of what exactly I was looking for, what my main concerns were. I don't regret giving the beta readers that I asked as volunteers these questions, because a lot of them were really helpful for me. Like I mentioned, there were 3 other people that beta read my work, and I read through it thoroughly and was able to get a lot of insight to that. This was the only one where I noticed that something was up. Realistically, the full first chapter, I didn't notice a thing. Even with this first question, the dialogue seems realistic enough. Are some lines more corny than others? Since I am writing a teen fiction novel, I want to make sure that it is relatable to teens, but also not cheesy. Since I am an adult and I am a little bit more experienced with writing for adults, I wanted to make it more readable for teenagers while also not making them feel like, ugh, this doesn't seem or sound realistic. Throughout everything, I mean, they were saying all positive things, which was really interesting to me. Initially within this first chapter, like, oh, Amelia is a compelling protagonist. She's thoughtful, introverted, and carrying quite a burden, which is not wrong. She's protective, makes her instantly sympathetic. A lot of this was very hyping me up. And so originally when I was reading this, I was thinking, okay, like, as much as I love to be complimented on my work, I was really hoping to get some things that I was doing wrong and things that I wasn't doing quite right. So that was kind of the first inkling of like, okay, I'm not exactly sure that this person beta read it. They probably just read it and said, yeah, looks good, like giving me a review. So I had some concerns about that initially, but at this point, I am not suspicious at all that they used AI. I will get to the point soon where they use AI. Some of the things I also noticed inside of the first chapter, rereading their notes, is, did they read the book? Part of me thinks like, oh, maybe they read it fast or they skipped over it. Maybe they didn't read everything and they're just kind of trying to like guess some things that are happening. For example, come over here. Also, a little more sensory grounding could help us feel what it's like to be in Amelia's state. How does insomnia manifest physically for her? So the thing is, Amelia doesn't have insomnia. That's the whole entire point of the book. So it felt strange reading this over and being like, oh, how does insomnia feel to her? Because that wasn't the best description of it. Again, things that were not necessarily huge red flags about AI, but maybe red flags about, I'm not exactly sure if you read this. I'm not sure if you were paying attention to the reading. Chapter 1, I feel like I was not immediately caught off guard. Again, they mentioned a bunch of different character names, accurately describing the parents as overprotective because that's what they are. And so I figured, okay, they're at least getting the general gist of everything. And then I read the notes for chapter 2. I'm going to read some of these portions out loud, and then we're going to jump back over to my manuscript and do the search and find tool for a couple of these things. And you'll see why in just a second. Does the dialogue seem realistic enough? Are some lines more corny than others? The dialogue mostly feels natural, especially between Amelia and Xander. Xander? Xander is not a character in my book. Xander is non-existent. There isn't even a character within chapter 2 that could be misunderstood as Xander. In chapter 3, you meet a bunch of new characters. Xander does not exist in my manuscript. That was the biggest, siren to me, was, oh no, something went wrong. And it keeps getting worse. My hope was that initially that was just a misspelling, but as you can see, it is pretty consistent throughout. This is mentioned 8 times. A character that does not exist was mentioned 8 times in the chapter 2 review. Amelia's condition, her secrets, and her complicated relationship with Xander. Again, not only does Xander not exist, but they have completely integrated a fake subplot of a potentially relationship or romance. Xander's concern and patience makes him easy to root for. The guy that doesn't exist, especially since he seems hurt but is still trying. Again, he does not exist. The emotional distance between them adds depth without alienating the reader. Again, this is all non-existent. Are the characters likable? They added in a completely new character. So this is when I realized how often Xander was being mentioned, that there's no way that 1, that they read the book, and 2, there's no way that something didn't go on with this, that something else didn't read the story. And even if, I was trying to think of all of the different things that I could do to give them the benefit of the doubt, and maybe they just accidentally switched up some beta reading they were doing for somebody else. But it's strange because elements of my chapter intertwine with elements that did not happen in my chapter, and those both are being shown as chapter 2 notes that are being beta read. Okay, so obviously we know that Read Kemi did not read my chapter and either made up or fed it something that included something strange with Xander. We keep going. Was there anything that you would change about what you have read? Minor things. Add stronger transition scenes, especially between classrooms, hallways, memories, thought sequence. Consider cutting or tightening internal monologue that starts to repeat the same emotional notes. Amelia worrying about what to say, doubting Xander's intentions. Again, Xander does not exist. Possibly hint at clearly how long she's been back at school so readers understand this is her first interaction with everyone or not. Huh? This is not her first time at school. She has been at public school for a long time. The first chapter and the second chapter replicate her normal life. There are plot points that are being made up that are not in my manuscript. Let's see. How many times do I mention school? I mentioned school about 38 times. I know, but if we didn't tell her something, who knows what she would say to her friends at school. That night's portrait was for school. I don't want to go back to school, he whined. The school was bustling 5 minutes before the bell. The bell rang through the school. On the first day of school, she explained it so she could familiarize ourselves with our names. She was there the first day of school. Hey, Red, how was school today? Well, I think if it's just a kid you go to school with, it should be okay. But if you ever see him again and he tries to talk to you, I need you to get a teacher and another adult at the school, okay? Hi, honey, how was school? It is abundantly clear throughout the entire manuscript that school is a consistent thing about the plot. It is not a new concept. Is there anything about the plot or characters' actions that didn't make sense to you? Not exactly, but Mr. Collins... Made-up character number 2. What parts of it did you like best? Do you have a favorite character? The hallway scene between Amelia and Xander. Again, Xander doesn't exist. It was full of quiet tension, believable emotions, subtle power shifts. Well done. Well done on my fake character? Favorite character is Xander. Again, Xander does not exist. The beta reader's favorite character was a character that does not show up in my manuscript. In fact, I don't even think it shows up. Let's go even further, so you guys know that I am not just trying to make up drama for no reason. Welcome to my drive. Oh, it's that I got scammed by a beta reader. Yeah, that's the only time that Xander is mentioned is by talking about this. And Mr. Collins, another character that does not exist. Let's try this. In my full drive where I keep everything. No recent items, match your search. If he was a character anywhere, it would have showed up. And even if, let's go further. Okay, here's all my trash. We're in my trash. And I don't go through my trash very often. Items will be deleted forever after 30 days. Unless I was so dedicated to just try and drag somebody. Okay, again, it's showing it not in trash. Nothing. It shows up nowhere in my drive. I would have to be genuinely diabolical to go through my manuscript, take out every single mention of an entire character, an entire 2 characters, in order to drag somebody. I know that for the most part, people will believe me with this story, but I want to bring forth as much evidence as possible and make it abundantly clear that Mr. Collins and Xander do not exist. And so that means this entire manuscript was either not read and made up, which would be a better option, but the likelihood of that is much lower than it being fed through AI, which was horrendous. Now, after this point, I made a clear-cut decision, obviously, an obvious decision, to not ever reach out to Reed Kemi. But then Reed Kemi reached out to me again several months later, asking for more manuscripts. This person is very actively trying to feed things through AI and is scamming people and like wanting to scam people. And even if it is somebody who is being a beta reader and they simply just want to make like some easy work for themselves, either way, it is not consensual and it is not ethical. A little bit more about the first chapter, because obviously, even though the first chapter notes I felt like were pretty good, I was like, was there something that I missed? Something that I missed that could have told me sooner, even sooner, that I was being scammed and that my stuff was being put through AI. And then I saw this line and I realized I don't remember typing this line. And there were several lines that a lot of the beta readers said this line was a little bit corny, and sometimes I forgot that I completely put it in there. I assumed that it was just one of those times. And so just for the heck of it, I double checked. Let's just take out the punctuation, and see. Yeah, that line didn't exist. I didn't write it. I didn't write that line. I'm getting a little bit heated during this recording because, for one, I can't believe how stupid I was, and for two, I can't believe how gullible I was in thinking that people who reached out to you would potentially simply, not do something like this. And it was pretty heartbreaking to me, and has definitely been discouraging, for sure, especially when trying to look for beta readers. So Reed Kemi actually deleted their original Instagram pretty soon after I sent them an email saying that I had high suspicions that they used AI to feed into my manuscript and that I did not consent to that, and that if they were to message me again, that they would be blocked and reported. They deleted a lot of their stuff around that time. I don't know if it was due to me confronting them, or if it was due to being caught by somebody else potentially, because that's what their whole entire platform was. Their entire platform was being a beta reader on Instagram. And so they actually got a new Instagram, and this is the name that they went by. I researched them again recently before making this video, and it appears that that Instagram is also gone as well. So it's pretty clear that they keep on jumping from place to place and that they are continuing to scam people. So if you see anybody on Instagram, on the internet, through their email, you are looking for beta readers and you see somebody by the name of Reed Kemi or this name, I don't remember the exact name that they went by later, so I'm just going to put it here. Do not, under any circumstances, give them your manuscript. I have learned my lesson the hard way. I am so beyond grateful that I was cautious with my manuscript and I didn't send them the whole thing. That would have been doubly as devastating. I probably would have had to throw away the whole entire manuscript of a story that I am planning on becoming my debut novel. And with the people that you give your manuscript to, I know it is so hard to get people to read your manuscript for beta reading. I understand that it can be complicated with people wanting to be paid to be beta readers. I understand the complications of giving it to your loved ones and them just dropping the ball because they don't understand how crucial this moment is in this portion of creating your draft. But please be patient, because it's just not worth it. It is not worth giving your manuscript quickly to a stranger that could non-consensually send your stuff through AI. It just isn't. I don't know how this is going to affect my future as being an author with this specific manuscript. I'm still going to continue writing this manuscript, and hopefully throughout this experience, I will be able to be scammed a lot less. This new age of AI is just so much more sticky than I ever imagined that it could be, especially for writers. I never thought that writers would have to deal with it on this level. So that is a little bit more of my horror story of what happened and how you should always chat a little bit more with your beta readers rather than taking it the easy shortcut way that I did, because I got kicked in the ass for it. I really did.